Welcome to Museum Archipelago. I'm Ian Elsner. Museum Archipelago guides you through the rocky landscape of museums. Each episode is never longer than 15 minutes. So let's get started. Lana Pajdas is from Croatia.
We are a small country and we have fewer inhabitants than some US cities, We don't have as many fields of industry or strong economy or whatever, and tourism is maybe the most important field we have.
But in recent years, the Croatian city of Dubrovnik, due in part to being a prominent filming location of the TV series Game of Thrones, has experienced dramatic overcrowding.
I was there last time and it was pretty much terrible to see that people were waiting in lines to enter inside the old town, inside the walls. And there were so many agencies selling Game of Thrones tours and taking people to some specific areas where it's kind of difficult to have so many people in the same place, even for safety reasons.
Pajdas is the founder of FunMuseums, a heritage and culture travel blog.
Okay, my name is Lana Pajdas. My blog, it's called Fun Museums because I simply like to say that museums are fun above all. Visiting museums is a fun experience, and people shouldn't think that museums are something cold, elegant, smart, intellectual. It's just people can have that experience in their leisure time.
Pajdas is also a museum marketer and consultant. Her overall theme is that museums are fun. It's a radical idea, and it influences everything, from her philosophy on museum marketing to a way to approach overcrowding in museums and heritage sites.
Exactly. That is my guiding principle. The way I write my articles is to say the most cool, funky stuff about each museum I visit. Sometimes museum professionals don't like it at all. That's why some people from museums curators, for instance, or museum marketing professionals or education professionals, they send me messages. Yeah, could you stop saying things that way because it's in contrast with our professional values? But then I said, okay, but that's what people like to know. That's what people like to hear. If you think that it should be more intellectual, you need to understand that most of the people can't really read it that way, can't really understand it the way you want to present it to them.
But there is a real tension because the axis isn't just between what is fun and what is intellectual. In episode 17 of Museum Archipelago, I cover the spectacular failure of a Disney theme park concept called Disney's America in 1994. The park, which would have opened in Virginia not far from Washington, D.C., would have showcased, quote, the sweep of American history within a fun theme park environment. It is particularly notable to witness the confidence and enthusiasm Disney executives had for a tightrope between entertainment and American history.
An example is a town on the east of Croatia. Its name is Vukovar. The town was heavily destroyed in the most recent war in this part of Europe in 1991 when it was occupied. Almost all the buildings were destroyed. Almost all the people had to go away from there. And it was one of the most terrible stories that happened in Europe after the end of the Second World War. And now that city has been quite well restored. Some people went back to live there, and the museum was completely renovated. And obviously, the visit to that museum is a nice and enjoyable experience, but in recent history, you really need to deal with some awful stuff that happened just less than 30 years ago. It's difficult to a person from Western Europe and sometimes it's difficult to understand what really happened in the lands of ex-Yugoslavia. It's even sometimes too complicated, even for people from these areas, because it's not that simple as some historians like to present, as some books like to present, or some journalists, and there are even many different opinions. So I think that museums really sometimes need to take a certain side, even though others will disagree. Museum that deals with those stories needs to, first of all, to show what are those emotions and to collaborate with people who suffer those emotions. And of course, some emotional intelligence is very important for those museum professionals who would create that storytelling that would transmit emotions of certain people to people who will be just visitors or who may have nothing to do with those areas or stories.
No matter what kind of museum you're about to walk into, you have a sense of what you might find inside. And since that sense is partially informed by a museum's marketing, Pajdas has made a habit of noting how people react to museums before they go.
In most cases, it happens that people procrastinate their decisions to go to a museum. That happens more often than not. Most of the time, they will say but maybe some other time. I go some next time. I would really like to visit that museum, but today I feel a bit tired. I'm hungry. I want to go to eat, to drink. I prefer to stay at home, watch a movie. But I would really love to visit that museum, but maybe one day. When my friends go to Paris, for instance, they say, I want to visit Louvre, but I know there are other museums, but maybe other time, because Louvre is already enough for me for these 3 days or something like that.
Right. This tendency to choose the most popular museum to the exclusion of less frequently visited ones is part of Pajdas's interest in sustainable tourism.
Parallelly interested in sustainable travel thing along with the museum thing. And these are the two areas that I actually mentioned as my primary areas of focus and interest. So museums and sustainable travel. And sustainability has so many faces. I'm quite interested in seeing about energy efficiency and waste management. But over-tourism being one of my focus areas, even though I don't really pretend to know what could be a solution for that. Some attractions such as the Alhambra Castle in Spain introduced online booking, and you can't really just come in, buy the ticket and enter, but you need to book your spot in advance online. And sometimes you can't get a ticket if you just remember a week before you want to go. And these are some of the solutions.
I do wonder how much of this heavily concentrated overcrowding has to do with the nature of social media itself. There's a network effect of a geotagged photo, not just at a particular heritage site, but at a particular spot within that heritage site that presents the best angle for a photo or looks exactly the way it did on Game of Thrones. Of course, there are many other factors that lead to overcrowding. The cheap flights, the increasing ability of people to travel, the dynamic of travel as a product. And if the Acropolis in Athens is already at capacity every single day, what is it going to look like 10 or 20 years from now? And to go back to Disney theme parks, tourism as a product already has an answer. Just raise the prices. But heritage for the rich isn't heritage anymore.
Heritage should be accessible. Obviously, for many people around the world, it's not really affordable to even go to some places. What I want to be avoided is that it becomes too expensive so that wealthy people can afford visiting those attractions. That's what I would like to be avoided. And the other thing, I would really like to encourage more people who really like to travel to visit some secondary attractions, not go necessarily to the most famous places, but to visit some places around that usually also need visitors and can and the more local people could make money for living if they get visitors on that particular places, because more people could be employed in those places, or some businesses could flourish, or that's the basic thing.
And this is what ties all aspects of Pajdas's work together. To use the social media network effect to share the secondary attractions of a city, balancing the pressure on the most popular heritage site. To read Pajdas's blog and to learn about her consulting work, visit FunMuseums.eu. Her Twitter handle is LANAPAJDAS. This episode of Museum Archipelago is sponsored by the Museum's Heritage and Public History program at the University of Missouri at St. Louis. The museum's Heritage and Public History program is currently accepting applications for the fall 2019 semester. They offer an MA degree as well as a graduate certificate. Their programs address pressing needs of museums and heritage institutions in the 21st century and prepare students for professional careers in museums, historic sites and societies, cultural agencies, and related organizations. Financial support is available for a limited number of students, and applications are due by February 1st. For more information, please call 314-516-4805 or visit their website at umsl.edu/museums. Thanks to the Museums, Heritage, and Public History program at the University of Missouri at St. Louis for their support of Museum Archipelago. You'll find a full transcript of this episode, along with show notes, at museumarchipelago.com. Club Archipelago members get access to a bonus podcast feed that's sort of like the director's commentary to the main show. Subscribe at patreon.com/museumarchipelago. If this is your first show, don't forget to subscribe for free in your favorite podcast player. Thanks for listening. And next time, bring a friend.